All right, fam. Oh, we have another great episode coming. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm really excited about our Brave Voices in Education family. This is the podcast where boldness meets brilliance and healing meets hustle. I'm Craig Ernst Martin, educator, advocate, and curator of Courageous Conversations. This is a space for those who refuse to shrink. Are you ready to enjoy this hot cup of courage? Of course, that's what you're supposed to be like. Yes, Craig, yes. All right, so let's brave it together. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just teach English, he speaks liberation. I'm calling him doctor already, but Patrick Harris II is a writer, a speaker, a storyteller, and an unapologetic champion for the humanity of Black young people and Black educators. He's the author of The First Five, a love letter to teachers, a internationally recognized educator, and someone who walks into school buildings with a mirror in one hand and a mic in the other, always reminding us that joy, justice, and truth must live together in every classroom. Patrick has been featured in Teaching Tolerance, Edutopia, Education Post. Told you I was dealing with celebrity here, baby. But it's not about fame. It's about freedom. He teaches with his full self and invites others to do the same. He's a proud Detroit native, a Black queer educator, and someone who uses storytelling as resistance, rest, and revolution. Patrick, welcome to Brave Voices in Education. How's your heart today, my brother and friend?
Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate that. Wow. Wow. Especially to get that at this time of the school year. I appreciate that. I feel like all teachers should, experience an introduction like that. I feel in this moment the sun is shining. My plants are up against the window looking healthy despite my neglect. Kids are learning. I just feel blessed in this moment. I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel grateful. And yeah, I'm glad to be here with you. Like, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate that.
How would I not invite someone whom I met? I'm sitting here trying to roll back in time and see whether or not I know it was an ASCD event. I just can't remember whether or not it was like Washington D.C. or whether or not it was like Nashville. But I had the opportunity to meet you, and at that time, you were just about to get on the big stage, the main stage, as one of our key speakers for this audience of like tens of thousands of people who were in the audience, and then tens of thousands of people who were in the community virtually. And what I loved about just my engagement with you, you were incredibly humble. You made me feel loved and seen as another fellow Black male educator in the community. And you it's like there is something about being in your ether, being in your ecosystem, just being in space with you, that instantly, no matter what you've gone through, people automatically lit up and feel like, I don't know what I done went through. I don't know how I'm gonna get that mortgage paid. But because I'm here with him, it's gonna be all right. And so I'm just curious, how has it been for you to be this beacon of light, love, and truth, especially with this particular school year and all of the things that we have experienced in our
Wow. Again, I really appreciate that. I remember that moment like it was yesterday, and I remember that was a really big conference. I'm also blanking on the location, but I do remember just like how I felt in the moment. I was like, this is my first ASCD event. There's a ton of people. I don't know how they heard about me to be like a keynote speaker, but thank you for the opportunity. But I also remember like that was my first time sort of being in the community, particularly like as an emerging leader. And so like there was a lot of like newness, but I felt so at home in the space. Like education conferences can feel lonely sometimes if you don't know the community that you're in. And so to sort of be kind of welcomed in and hugged and seen and seeing people that I saw on Zoom and on Twitter, like in real life, particularly post pandemic, well, not post, but like post shutdowns, I'll say, like I just felt super seen and heard. Man, like when I think about like what my role is, as a teacher, it has evolved since that 4-year-old me, dreamed the dream of being in front of the classroom, And the moment that I sort of expanded my view of what it means to be an educator and a teacher, not just someone who like facilitates dynamic curriculum, but someone who like facilitates life and someone who is like not just a teacher but a human first, you know what I mean? And like someone who uses their life experience as a tool to help others, right? And to see our way out of these things that we are experiencing, like, is a blessing. I've experienced a lot of turbulence in this profession. I did not expect to work in 6 schools in 6 years, but it happened, right? And I sort of said to myself, like, "This is a story." And there's a reason why we, binge watch things on Netflix. There's a reason why we doom scroll, right? It's because as a human species, we are, like, moved by stories. We are moved by people, and I think teaching is one of those professions where we can stand to do a lot more storytelling and not just strategy sharing. And so I sort of wanted to flip that on its head and say, like, I actually don't want to just keep throwing these tools in y'all's tools box. You know what I mean? Like y'all are not empty vessels, but I want teachers to recognize the power of their own humanity. I want them to recognize the power of like tapping into their passions as the ultimate tool for longevity in this profession. Honestly, man, like that speech and many others that year really moved me. My book constantly moves me every time I read it over again. I'm like, oh my gosh, this how I felt? Is this
Yeah.
how I felt? And so I just would encourage, more teachers to not just share their opinions and not just share their strategies and what worked, you know what I mean? Like, but really share what happened, and why it happened. And like, let's continue to like develop a culture of reflection with each other. I think it matters.
I would agree with you. One of the insightful quotes, and there's just so many that are in your incredible book, The First Five, um, is and I'm pulling it up because I wanted to make sure that I honored it. You said, "When I put my humanity first, I then acknowledge that I'm someone that has a story. It is also important for you to recognize that you are someone that has a life, that has a history. We often tell teachers to leave that at the door. No, bring it with you. Kids need to know that you're real and that they can hold you and know you. And so, when did you first realize that your presence in your classroom or in the classrooms that you've presided in wasn't just educational, but that they were also political?"
My first year of teaching, straight off the bat. First
Mhm.
year of teaching, I studied education in college and undergrad, and even when I was coming up through high school and middle school, and I knew I wanted to be a teacher, like you always just kind of plan for best case scenario. Like you really don't plan for like things to go wrong. But specifically in college, I sort of like remember like falling in love with lesson planning and falling in love with curriculum design and falling in love with the possibilities of the kinds of conversations that I could have with young people about this big world that we live in. But I remember that first year of teaching, like every possible value that I had as it pertains to being a teacher and an educator just felt so challenged by administrators and by those folks who were kind of running that school system at the time. It was overwhelming, frankly. But what really kind of threw it over the edge was, and this is talked about in the book, but there was a moment where I had finally gotten control over my class, as they sort of put it. And so they wanted to reward me by giving me more work, which was piloting behavior management system where they put a micro or put a kinda like a headphone inside of your ear, and then they coach you from the back of the room. It was called in-ear coaching. Um, it was really popular around 2014, 2015 era. And while they were in the back sort of coaching me, they were sort of telling me to discipline kids for things that I would have never disciplined them for. So if I was teaching and I, told these second graders at the time to put your name on your paper, and I had a squirrely kid who did not. My job was to change his color on the color chart, right? They would literally lean in and whisper and say, "You got to give Deshaun a check. You got to put him on yellow." And then like the students who were not used to that routine would seriously be like, "Mr. Harris, what's up?" You know what I mean? And eventually, while those teachers were coaching me in the back, or those administrators, eventually, like there were some students who like I had to call the dean on, right? Because they did not have their feet on the floor. They didn't have their name on the paper when I asked the first time, right? And that was because of the in-ear coaching that was happening. But here's the important piece. I realized in that moment that I was having a reaction in my body, right? Like there was something happening on the inside of me that was even bigger than what was happening in that moment. And I was trying to figure out why this felt so wrong.
Mhm.
Like what was the problem here? Like what's being triggered inside of me that's kind of giving me this emotional response. And what I just kept going back to was the fact that I had this vision of what teaching was like that was based on my own teaching experience, my own experiences as a student, right? And it was in that moment that I sort of realized I was like, oh, I'm not just sending Deshaun to the dean. I'm sending little Patrick to the dean too. You know what I mean? Like, and anytime that I gave a consequence to a student, that felt unjust, it felt like an attack on me, you know?
Mm.
And so, like, I had to sort of sit with the truth of the fact that, like, I'm not separate from
Mm.
this community. I'm
Right.
not separate from this work. I'm actually a part, an
Mhm.
equal part of this member, because when a teacher walks into a classroom, to teach, to be a part of a communal space, right? Like we're not just teaching to the young people in front of us, but we're also teaching to our younger selves. There's not a decision that a teacher makes that is not in favor of what they would have wanted or needed as a student growing up. That's just the truth of the matter, you know? And so it was in that moment that I sort of realized that I was just like, oh, I'm feel like little Patrick wouldn't have wanted this. You know what I mean? And so from that moment forward, I sort of begun this like kind of like unconscious sort of like reflection of like how am I mirroring my own sort of needs as a young second grader or fifth grader or seventh grader, and how am I being the teacher that he needed or should have had growing up, And how am I, or how was little Patrick different than the teachers that I teach, or how is little Patrick different than the students that I teach now? What do they have in common, right? And so paying attention to my body really helped me to sort of recognize that there are things that we have in common, and that I want to continue to kind of honor my body and my humanity kind of in that space. But I really recognize that from the first year of teaching all the way until yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. It is it's really resonant for what you're sharing. I have shared many times. I grew up in Catholic education, and so for those of us who are born Catholic, raised Catholic, then you deal with guilt, right? And so but it's there's a intentional shaming guilt that happened because you're like, is this what Jesus would do, right? And it's like, huh, I don't know what Jesus was doing at 13. Like that's the part of the Bible y'all hiding from me. I want to know the secrets. I want to know whether or not, Jesus was with RuPaul and the drag race queens, out there in, Bethlehem, but y'all won't talk about that. I say that it just because one of the things that I had to reconcile with as an educator as well, as being a black male educator, we come in and automatically we're like the celebrities and surrogate father figures for so many young people. And depending on the communities you preside in or reside in, you may or may not have black men who, or you may not even have a male figure, because we're finding that not just black families, but many families across our states actually have fatherless homes, right? And so we represent that. And so I came to Boston specifically because in New Orleans, I exited my Catholic career, went into public ed. We didn't, it was definitely a shift. But then when I got here to Boston, there were some practices about this very rigid format that are mostly dominant in charter communities. I was a leader in the charter community, so I'm going to say that before I say the rest of this, where there was this expectation that pencils have to be, at 180 degrees at the top of your desk and hands on your desk, feet down, planted. And I'm like, I probably would have died. And I wouldn't even be an educator at this time because that level of rigidity and expectation would not work for me. And then in my classrooms, I'm just like, at the end of the day, this is the expectations. I know that the expectations are going to be followed or executed because we have relationship. And I knew that relationship was important to young people in order for them to follow or actually trust me enough to know that I'm leading them in a direction of better outcomes or better thinking or to challenge them. And I also understood that they had so many other things that they carried in their backpack with them. And I'm not talking about just the physical backpack. I'm talking about that invisible backpack that we talk about when we talk about biases and traumas and other things that young people carry. And so when I think about the infrastructure that was set with, this time period that you shared of the rigidity and expectations that we had to discipline and course correct and correct our young people in these formulaic ways. I'm like, we didn't do those in white institutions. I've been to a number of them globally and domestically. And I'm like, well, why is it that we don't actually institute these same practices in communities that are not majority, not the global majority? And so I'm also curious about, well, what are some of the other things you had to unlearn as an educator in order to have better outreach and connection with the young people you serve, as well as how you may have connected with some of your staff members and colleagues in the work?
Man, phew. I think I've had to unlearn a lot. I was just actually talking to one of my closest friends yesterday about how I'm like experiencing new teachers in this space now
Mhm,
as someone who is finishing up his 10th year of teaching.
mhm,
And I was like, oh, I see myself in these young people now. So here's the thing I think I have like had to unlearn the most is that teaching is not like a 1 year gig. It's just not. Like in order to see the fruits of your labor, in order to like really make the impact that you want, you got to see teaching as a long-term investment and a long-term gain. As I sort of stated earlier, my first 6 years were in six different schools. And I have no regrets actually about skipping, around. I needed to move and to leave in order to find a school to call home
mhm.
because there is no way that I would have been the best teacher that I could be if I was sort of bound, as you're saying, by the rigidity, by the things that were not allowing me to enact the values that I knew were important, in my upbringing. But when I finally did find a school that I went to for a second year, first of all, it's just different when you come back the second year. It just is. You know what I mean? Like when those kids see you in the hallway and they're
Mhm.
like, "Yo, you're back." You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I am. I'm back. It feels good, Or I think like because we're kind of like in this like school year of a vacuum, right? I'll never forget when when I taught sixth grade and this kid like was not writing, right? Like did not love writing, but wasn't until seventh grade that it clicked. Wouldn't have seen that, right, if I had not come back for a second year, right? And then and so much of your first year is about learning how to navigate your school system in a way that makes sense for you and making it your own. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, yo, when you come back for a second year and a third year and a fourth year and you're able to kind of build on the work that you do every year and tweak things and you don't have to always start completely from scratch, right? Like it allows you to navigate the space with a bit more confidence, and it allows you to exercise the trust that you have from the community. You know what I'm saying? Like it's nice when parents are like, yo, like, we've been waiting to have you as a teacher. We've been excited to like for this moment to happen.
Mhm.
It's also cool to see how different, groups of students react to different staples in your curriculum. That's exciting. But I've been able to grow as an educator, and I've been able to kind of sustain myself in the work because I've been at a school that I really love. Sort of said when I first came into the profession, I don't care where I teach. I don't care, uh, uh, um, where I'm teaching, what I'm teaching, you know what I mean? Like, but those kind of things do actually matter. You know what I mean? Like we ought to get clear about what are our values? What do we look for in a school? What do we want our feedback to sound and look like, and from whom? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much autonomy do we really desire in education? Do we want to be at a school that is a bit more fluid, or do we want one that has more structure? Do you want a curriculum, or do you want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, be in a sandbox? Do you want to have a small team, or do you want to be a part of a larger school network, right? Like, being able to answer those questions are important. And I realized for myself that as a black, queer teacher who's a visionary and like comes up with big ideas on the spot, right? Like I needed to be a part of a smaller school that gave me a lot of autonomy and that trusted me and that allowed me space in the school day to also do other things too, you know? And so knowing that for myself allowed me to write the book. It allowed me to start the podcast. It opened up a lot for me creatively that made this work, evolve even outside of the classroom. So I think really finding a school to call home is one of the greatest lessons that I have learned. And I think again, seeing it from a long-term perspective, right? Like you may not be able to tackle everything in 1 year. And so saying to myself, like, okay, I'm gonna do this the first year, and then the second year I'll try it this way, or I'll try to add in this piece, right? And like the longer that you stay, like the truly I think the longer you can stay in a school and kick your feet up and stay a while, like it is, because our work is communal work. It's relational work, and it's really challenging to build the relationships if you're constantly uh, bouncing around, because then it becomes more about you, right? Than it does like the benefits of the community.
I agree. I agree so much. And I appreciate the fact that for you, you've been so unapologetic about the many intersections of who you are and how you show up in this world. And you and I come from quite the lineage in regards to, queer Black educators. And I'm using educators more broadly because I really do want folks to recognize that some of our favorite either civil rights figures or those who have, been critical and crucial to advancements for Black educators, Black education, the education system as we know it today. We have like Dr. D.L. Stewart, who was actually a professor. He was a strategist, actually a Black trans man who, through his work, the quote that I'm holding on to here is liberation is not a metaphor, it's a roadmap. Education must move us towards it. And so when I think about other folks who I appreciate, like Essex Hemphill, David J. Johns, who's the director of National Black Justice Coalition, Bayard Rustin, James Baldwin, and more. I am curious for you, as expansive as your genius and as expansive as your intersections, I'm curious how you carry so bravely being a Black queer educator that shapes how you show up in every space, but also what is it that you're hoping that your young people and the educators and families who are engaged with you, experiencing you, what are you hoping that they will take away as part of your legacy in their hearts and minds?
Wow, that's such a powerful question. I just finished teaching the first section of This Book is Anti-Racist to my sixth graders. And what I love about what Tiffany Jewell teaches them and what we often take away is that there are two things that can be true at the same time. And the first is the world likes to categorize people. It's just a human thing that we do, right? We need to make sense of what we're seeing in the world, and therefore the world wants to put us in boxes. At the same time, you get to decide who you are.
Yeah.
You get to decide, your identity. I say all that to say choice. You know what I mean? Like, but to show up as my full self because my students were already, you know what I'm saying, trying to make sense of who I was, in my beginning years of teaching, right? Like I would hear the whispers and the conversations about like, is Patrick gay or is he not? You know what I mean? Like where does he come from? And I realized that it was just much more powerful when I like boldly told them, this is who I am. You know what I mean? Like, and on the first day of school, let me just demystify it for you. You know what I mean? Like, my name is Patrick in my teacher introduction. I say, my name is Patrick. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm an older sibling. I'm queer. I'm Buddhist. I'm black. You just got to say you're black. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like it might feel like, oh well, obvious, Patrick, but like race is such a taboo topic that like depending on where you are, saying the word black can feel like a cuss word. You know what I mean? Like race can feel like a cuss word. But it's like, no, like it's okay. I'm black. You can say I got a black teacher. You can say that.
Lean
That's all
into it,
right.
baby.
Lean into
Your teacher's what? Black. Oh,
he's black. Woo, Lord. Lord, he is and will be tomorrow. So
to say.
like I think the so like when I was able to say that, I recognized that like it influenced students to also like claim their identity boldly, right?
Yes.
I didn't like I'll just share two things. When I said like my queerness does not belong in the classroom, I shouldn't tell students that I'm queer. I shouldn't say this, right? Students said it about me anyway, right?
Mm,
Like it came out when students were mad at me. It came out when parents like had some things to say. You know what I mean? Like I heard it in conversations and like what I didn't feel comfortable with was and what felt triggering was that people were defining me for me, and
mhm.
I was just like, no, 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 no. Let me give you the language, right? Like let me tell you that what you're telling me or what you're telling each other is not a secret,
Yes.
right? And so, um, when I like sort of said like I am a queer person, you know what I mean? Like that opens up a level of safety, you know what I mean? Like, and it tells people like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Like queer people exist, right?
Yes.
Like I didn't know that queer people or that like if I had any queer teachers like that was not something that was told to me, and like as a queer person myself, like perhaps my journey would have been a bit different if teachers, you know what I mean, like if I had a gay teacher growing up, you know what I mean? Like and I could just like sort of recognize that like, oh yeah, like they're just a normal person. You know what I mean? Like Patrick is just a human being, right? And like that's what you're doing when you're sort of sharing that part about yourself. It's like it's like you're opening up the scope of like what's normal for them. And so like my students will be able to say like, "Oh yeah, like I can advocate for this because I had a black queer teacher once." You know what I mean? And he was just a normal human being. You know what I'm saying? So I think that defining it for them is like it just makes a world of difference, and it really allows them to kind of claim parts for themselves. I'll always remember, like, I have a teacher who teaches creative writing on the same wall as me, my next door neighbor, and they always do this kind of character building activity, and she always, starts with a teacher kind of like as a modeling example, and she's like, well, let's just describe a teacher, and then we'll use imagery to sort of, write this character into a story or something of that nature. And when they describe me, they say, Patrick, he's nice, he's funny, he's black, you know what I mean? Like he's queer, he's Buddhist. They like those are the three things that they say, And like I'm glad that they see me in that way because I in order for teachers to do their best work, you know what I mean? Like we have to bring our whole self into the classroom. Like we have to bring all of our identities because that's what we ask of our students.
Mm,
We don't ask our students to pretend. We don't ask them to perform. We ask them to show up authentically. And so and frankly, that's the purpose of school, particularly now. That's our MVP. That's our most valued proposition is the fact that we are coming to school to learn how to be in community with people. You
mm,
can learn algebra any damn where. You can learn how to read on YouTube. You can learn how to analyze online. You can get an online school anywhere you want. You can do practice geography on TikTok. You can download an app and do science experiments, but you can't do it in community with people unless you're in school.
mm.
That's why we do what we do, right? Is because we're learning how to learn with each other. That's
Yes.
and like if our world really understood that as like the purpose of school, we might be able to make some better decisions about education policy. But that's a whole nother story. I say all
Well,
that to say
well.
if that's the meaning and that's what drives me, then I have to allow students to constantly reflect on like who they are and what's important to them and where they come from. And I'm giving them invitations to unlearn too. And I'm giving them invitations to decide like what's important to me. And I can only do that, or they can only do that if I also am an equal partner in that work.
Deeply appreciate that. I don't believe that I really interrogated bringing your full self to a space until I had to unpack for myself how much of me suffered and how much of me was invisible, how much of me would not be recognized no matter how joyful I was, no matter how many A's I may have made or honor roll or was, in clubs and things like that. And I think that I know for me as a kid, and also at points in my journey as an educator, I wanted to operate. I forced myself to operate with this mindset of excellence and working twice as hard. Owning that there were always going to be parts of me that would never be respected and regarded, and I just knew that I had to put the armor on, right? Because we were just in environments where we didn't see so many of us, and if you happen to be in an environment like for you are in Detroit where, I mean, you have such incredible folks who were like civil rights leaders in their own right. You are in the hotbed of like a Fannie Richards, right? She was the key to desegregation in Michigan with her first kindergarten program. And I think about you had, oh gosh, a good friend of mine, Charlie B. Keys is there. And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about our conversations, but you have like Dr. Geneva Smitherman, co-founded the Malcolm X Academy. And I think about Grace Lee Boggs. And so for those who are from Detroit hearing this, the James and Grace Lee Boggs community. And then Dr. Cornelius Golightly, who was the president of the Board of Ed, and he also championed education reform and equity. I wonder for them, as I think for you, each of them had to make a decision that who they are and who they were advocating for was not just for the children within themselves, because you talked about the Patrick within yourself first. and knowing that you're ministering and you're working towards that healing and liberation of the mind of the young Patrick, as well as moving forward with the, young people who are in front of you. And then you think about the experiences that you're now going to be shaping, because we're going to talk about Dr. Spooky in a second, of how you now you're going to expand this reach so that now other people will also have an opportunity to experience your genius and your daring bravely and being more of you in these spaces. So one of my final questions, as I recognize that, I want to honor the fact that you have young people that you may have to get to, but as you look at the place where you are in your time and career now, and you look forward to your journey ahead, for those who are going to continue to be in the classroom, for those who might be parents who are hearing this, for other your colleagues who are here, for your students who might say, "Yo, I gotta hear Mr. Harris, on this podcast." For them, they may be looking for a way to continue to be courageous in all of their experiences. I imagine just being in presence with you was a gift that gave them the courage to just be a little bit more of themselves. For them, they saw that there was an opportunity for them to rebel against the machine of groupthink and assimilation. But there are some folks who are like, I hear you, Patrick. It sounds great. I read your books. I've listened to you on podcasts, but I still don't know if I have enough courage. I don't know if I'm brave enough to show up in these ways as my full self. What would your advice be? And can you share maybe a anecdote from your experience that will help us to understand how you dare bravely in the work that you do?
Think one of the biggest sort of tropes or stereotypes about teachers is that it's a lonely work, is that you sit, is that you're in the four walls of your own classroom, you're by yourself all day. But what has helped me the most is people, community. You know what I mean? Teaching is one of the rare professions where you actually have to like the people that you work with. Like, it's actually one of the rare professions where you need a teacher bestie. You need a work bestie. You need people who know you outside of the work because the work is so emotionally taxing. And so, like, you need folks around you who know your heart and who know you as a person and who know where your triggers are and, and what you like to do on the weekends, and some people who can remind you, like, the importance of your own humanity when the work gets tough. And I am so grateful that I found that community early for me, because when I didn't have it in the schools to truly be my most authentic self, Jesus, when I didn't have it in my like when I didn't have it in school to be my most authentic self, I had it around me, right? And so professional organizations are going to be your best friend, right? And so thank God I had an NCTE to that told me, you're not crazy. You're not crazy.
Mhm.
Thank God I had an ASCD who said, like, you're not crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're gonna back you up in this work. You know what I mean? We're gonna practice with you. We're gonna give you the space to exercise some ideas that might feel stifling. You know what I'm saying? And the moment that I sort of like recognized that like I wasn't doing the kind of work that I wanted, once I recognized that I could do the work that I wanted, like in community with others, the easier it became, like I could talk about queerness and race and all kinds of identities because I exercise that language in my professional community. Like, I had friends who I could like converse about this stuff with. And then, of course, I had one or two work besties, and now, that I'm at the school that I'm at now, like, I got a whole department and a whole division of people who know me, right, and who back me up. You know what I'm saying? And like who say, "Oh yeah, like Patrick is queer and he's awesome, right? And he's this and he's that." And like who can speak to my work and my humanity. And so if the work feels scary, um, it it may be because you're trying to walk it alone. But again, the work that we do as school teachers is we walk together. We do this thing in in community. We do it hand in hand. I'm a part of the educolor group, and they take the and they build on the work of Hamilton and say like tomorrow there'll be more of us. You know what I mean? Like and like I think that has been like my driving force. That's been the thing that has allowed me to like constantly evolve, right? Is to be in conversations, like with folks who can challenge my thinking and to push me, In 2010, 2011, 16, like those Twitter chats were
Mm,
instrumental. We don't do them as much anymore, but back in the day, man, like Q1, Q2, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like the back in the day, we used to constantly reflect and talk and say like, I think I want to try this thing, but I'm not sure, right? And we had these like online communities that sort of helped before podcasts were a thing. You know what I mean? Like we were building community with one another, and then we get a chance to connect and in person at conferences the same way that I got a chance to connect with you, Craig. Like it makes it real, and it makes you want to go back and try something different. It makes you want to follow up with folks and say, I tried it and it worked. I tried it and I failed. You know what I mean? And like you can say like, man, like this is like this is exciting. The work is just more worthwhile when you do it in community with each other. I would say, uh, do it together. You know what I mean? Like do the work together. Like there are just so many moments and stories where I tried something new after talking about it with Lorena or after talking about it with Jose or Antonia or my partner, my teaching partner Roz, or and like ask them, what do you think? Am I doing this the right way? Is my heart in the right way? Right. And they'll give me tips and they'll give me like that moment to sort of like talk through the best case scenario, you know what I mean? And like silence that worst case. Cause as teachers, like we are in a like a perfectionist work, like the same way doctors and lawyers are, like we don't get an opportunity to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Like people expect us to come to work every day and give it our all because the kids are worth it. And I get that. But human work is messy. And
that's a
if
word.
that's the case, right? Like
That's a word.
we ought to recognize that as well. So don't do it alone, do it together. Join a professional learning community. Find a teacher bestie, you know what I mean? And if you don't have one, find a new school so you can get one. You know what I'm saying? And like really get in a place where like you can do the work together. It can't be a lonely work.
I agree. I agree. I appreciate that so much because now I remember like our first introduction was ASCD's Emerging Leader Program, and I was one of the
Yes.
co-architects of like the mentoring program that we did for years virtually. I think during the pandemic or coming off the pandemic or whatnot,
Yep.
and how much that cohort feel was very important. And so it might be that. I love that you brought up Jose Wilson, Doctor Jose Wilson,
Doctor.
who is going to be on the podcast soon as well. For one of the he's the founder of Educolor as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I think about ed leaders of color. There's so many. If you're international educators, Alok, Kevin Simpson. I'm like,
Yes, Kevin.
I'm just saying, hey, it's hard today. If you're like, I feel like I'm alone. There are Facebook groups, Instagram lives. There are, if you're like, educate, whatever is the thing, educators of color, educators of social change and climate, put it in, see what happens. Before we let you go, could you tell us about
Mhm.
Dr. Spooky Loading?
Oh my gosh. So I told y'all earlier that I have to be in a school that gives me some autonomy. And so 5 years ago, when we were in the midst of online teaching, we were brainstorming ways to keep kids engaged while we were online. And my school's MVP or most valued proposition is electives, right? They want teachers to create their own electives and offer them to students. And one thing that met the interest of little Patrick, but also met the interest of the kids who I was teaching at the moment was horror films. I was so inspired by Jordan Peele's Get Out and the kinds of conversations that folks were having about horror at the time that I created a middle school class that was history of horror films and literature. And it was 3 students in that class, and we watched a couple of films online on Zoom, and we analyzed them, and we talked about them, and that opened up a world of, like, possibility for me. I'm like, "Wait a minute, like, this is something we can do in schools, right?" Like, just for me. And so I've been teaching that elective for the past 5 years, and every year there are more students who take it. There are students who have taken the class now 3 times because they, like, wanna continuously learn more. This year, we took a field trip to a haunted mansion, right? Like, they're like, it's just, like, really quirky and cool. And what I realized is that, like, when you allow teachers to teach to their passions, it opens up a world of possibility for them too, you know? And so I recognize that, like, there were moments of, like, moments for me to open up, my own creative practices, right? And so last year, I was able to do my own horror installation, that was inspired by some of the conversations that I was doing with my students, and I have been, like, working on a manuscript, and I'm just like, I am just, like, loving this, like, creative world that I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, you know how, like, we get excited when students get a light bulb moment and they just, like, go in on something because we taught them, like, this, like, concept or we, like, introduced them to a book? It's like the same thing was happening for me. And
Yes.
that led to some conversations that eventually led to me applying for a PhD program and being offered a full ride to study Black horror at Michigan State University with
Really?
Dr. Kanitra Brooks, who is a
Nice.
Black horror scholar. And I'm excited to kind of unpack some of the work and like some of the text and to really think about like why is horror exciting and like how does it sort of like market itself to young people? Like why is Goosebumps a thing?
Mhm.
Why is that such a phenomenon for kids?
Yeah.
And how and when am I gonna write a Goosebumps version for Black kids. You know what I'm saying? Because what I've learned in the past 5 years is that horror is a unique tool to begin to have conversations about social justice because it's one of the rare forms that you don't have to play by any rules. And when kids don't have to play by the rules, they're able to have like more free conversations. And so it's been like such a beautiful journey. And I'm sad to be like leaving classroom teaching, but as I told my students, I told my parents, I'm not running from nothing. You know what I mean? Like I'm running towards like this next thing that I need to like accomplish, you know? Like I'm not trying to elevate my career or I'm not trying to make more money or like I'm not like running because teaching is hard. But if you do teaching right,
Mm.
and you really, like, put your whole self in it, you'd be amazed what human work will allow for you to do next, you know? And so, like, I'm grateful for the next step, you know? Like, I'm excited for that. So, if you are following me at President Pat, like, you'll be able to see this journey, but if you wanna read more of my horror analyses and work, you can, go to my website at the Black Paranormal Project.com, where I talk about all things spooky and how it relates to children and education and all the fun things.
Wow. So we will definitely have to have a follow-up because I'm excited. I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh, you just gave me a teaser, but we're at time. But I just want to thank you, Patrick, soon to be Dr. Patrick Harris, the second
thank you.
for just joining us. We will also have an opportunity to play a game, again at
Yes,
some time, but I want to honor the fact that we are at time, and I'm so grateful that you joined the Brave Voices and Ed fam. And you already gave folks your ways to connect with you. So Thank you so much for being part of this continued conversations.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Brave Voices of Education family. If something stirred in you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with your village, your team, your brave ones. Because brave leadership isn't just about a title, it's about the testimony. If you're building bold classrooms, curriculum with teeth, or schools that live and love louder than they punish, we want to hear from you. Come be a guest. Grab your Unbreakable guide. Come be a part of the movement at bravevoicespod.com. Until next time, generate your own joy. Never go it alone. Get free and always love your brave.